Hello. Well, those paying attention amongst you will probably notice first off that the name of the title here is different to the name of the title there. That's what happens when your IT director suggests data analytics dashboards, and then when you start writing it, he delegates it to someone else to present. So, fortunately, having been here this morning when the Open University presented, if that's the Harrods of learning analytics, then I think we're probably still trading out of a suitcase in the local market. So I'm quite pleased that I did change to what I've done. So I'm David Musi. I'm Head of Programme Management at the University of Greenwich, which quite rightly neither qualifies me as an expert in learning analytics nor in personal tutoring. But what I'm actually going to focus on is more of the journey. So less, I think what you've seen so far is a lot around learning analytics specifically. This is more about the change piece, the struggle, and I think it has been a struggle, to get us from where we were to where we are, which is just putting our toe in the water, and is still a struggle that we're having to really try and convince people of what we're trying to do. So, a little bit of context. We are a reasonably large university, 19,000 students across 3 main campuses across South East London and North West Kent. A number of students dotted around partner sites in the UK, and a fairly significant transnational education provision as well, of around 17,000. We're structured in 4 faculties with 23 academic departments. Now, I think listening to a lot of what people have said, we actually have a US student record system, and my director and myself have spent some time in the States, and actually we started noticing some of these trends quite a number of years ago. We brought those back, and we had some conversations early on, probably as far ago as 6 years ago, with senior colleagues, and actually the appetite just wasn't there. And we kept hearing things like, well, this is a grown-up environment, these are adults, and we actually are not a secondary school. We don't need to monitor, we don't need to be looking at data in this way. So actually we struggled to get any traction, any appetite for us to move into using any of the data that we had available. And we've had a VLE for 6, 7, however many years, that we could have been using information from. Changes first started, I think, to come along when, as well as senior management changes, where we had a new chief operating officer that was much more open to using data for these sorts of reasons. But also, I think the first thing was the UK border agencies, where they first moved to measuring or making us watch student attendance and mandating that. And that really gave us the first opportunity to say, look, we're being forced to do this. We're now able to take attendance data. We're able to take submission data. We can use this. But still, there wasn't that buy-in. It's still very much, yes, do it, keep us compliant. Let's use it for that population. So we built all these things for that population, but never used anywhere else. Over the last few years, there's been a definite increase in awareness in the sector. I mean, it's on its way up. It's almost at the very top of the Gartner hype cycle now. I think learning analytics is right at that, about to come over the peak. That coupled with projects like NTU, which was held up, articles in the press around learning analytics, and obviously that change in terminology from big data to learning analytics as well, coupled with a rise in systems that you could actually get some of this data out of. So we put in access control, we put in attendance monitoring, we already had a VLE system, and they were all generating this huge digital data footprint. But even with all that, we still found ourselves not pushing an open door. It was still a hard sell. So we found ourselves, not that we normally in IT go looking for work, but we actually were advocates of this, and we really believed that this was useful. So we started to look at what's going on in the institution that we could add some value to, without actually making it a formal learning analytics project or big data project. And we latched onto a personal tutoring policy. Now, we're traditionally a widening participation institution. Retention has always been a problem for us. And there was a big push back in around 2013 for really strengthening the personal tutor model. turning it from just that academic relationship to really one of a holistic relationship between a tutor and a tutee, one that covered pastoral, one that covered admin type advice. And interestingly, although we didn't influence anything that was in the policy, these are all lifted directly out of the policy, by the way, that we didn't write. There's the bottom one, which was tutors were expected to access records and tracking systems as available to monitor their tutees' progress. So we actually read this policy and we thought, well, maybe we can add some value here. Now, going along, our Education Development Unit seized hold of this and actually started to work with personal tutors in putting in a framework around personal tutor support, really. So they got on our portal, they got real estate right at the top in the prime slot, centre middle ground, and they built a personal tutor hub that linked back to a number of resources, video resources and all other sorts of useful information that was really aimed at supporting the tutor be better at working with their tutee. So all of those things were going along, and again, no input really from IT. This was just our Education Development Unit developing all these resources, training programs put in place to really help our tutors. So we looked at this and we thought, well, how can we add some value to this? How can we come up with an idea that both shows some uses of learning analytics, the first toe in the water of learning analytics, but also help solve a problem? So we assigned a business analyst to go and watch what was going on, and what they identified is all of that conversations and other bits and pieces that were happening were great. But when it came to drilling in and looking at some of the, what I guess bricks and clicks deems as static data, what was happening is there was a lot of clicking around in all different disparate systems at different places to really get a picture of what was going on. So what we designed was the concept of a tutee on a page, where we tried to deliver, through our self-service system, an amalgamation of all the key information that tutors were going off and looking at. And that included things like the demographic information, bringing that together, course or program module, administrative information about that, links to grades, to transcripts, all from the same hub, photo, and also, we put it here, one of our deputy vice chancellors at the time said, oh, well, what would be really great is that very first conversation between our students, our new student and their tutor, is the tutor can read their UCAS personal statement, find a little bit out about them, and that can become the first conversation starter. We had that. We had it X number of clicks away in a system. We brought it in and we located it there just to make it, whether anyone uses it, I doubt there's probably not a huge use of that, but it's there, and it was there to allow that conversation to start. We then built some new features to help. We created the ability to schedule the meetings. So the policy was underpinned by a number of meetings that were supposed to happen as well. We created an easier way to do that. And we created the ability to record comments about that. So if you have a conversation with X, you can type up some notes. So straying into CRM territory, but deliberately stopping short. And we were very clear that we weren't. I mean, we're already implementing Microsoft Dynamics across other spaces, but we tried to stop short of building a full CRM. What we then did was say, right, well, what can we start to bring in here to try and add a little bit of extra value, to give a conversation starter to these academics in their tutor-tutee conversation? And what we did, we just brought in some VLE usage. So we looked at, we use Moodle. We're bringing in the total number of logins for people, the dates of the last 2 logins, the number of items borrowed from our library. We then looking at the percentage of measured sessions attended for attendance monitoring, and also we were starting to use access control data as well out of our access to our library buildings. We actually dropped the access to the library because we felt it wasn't giving parity, because we only actually have access control across one of our buildings. So what we built was a system that we have roughly a ratio of about 20 tutees to a tutor, give or take. And what we built was this weigh-in, which is obviously a mock-up, but given a list of all the students, some of their key information, allows you to do a lot of things from here. But that was the entry point for the tutor. Then the main intention was to give them this page as the conversation piece. Single view, all the information in the main block that they would get at previously by trawling all over the place, and then a series of links that just put pertinent information just one click, always one click away. So they want to drill into the courses to see the schedule, the modules that are being taught, they can go there. Personal statement, the student transcript, etc. And all of the activity information as well. We then allowed them just to drill in and go down into a view that was like this. So, mistake number one, put it out in a list format. A hugely different reaction if you put it out in a ring donut or something else. But this was what was our toe in the water of an analytics piece. So we gave them the total number of logins, the last 2 logins, total number of items borrowed, and an overall percentage. And we also gave them a view where they could compare the cohort. So they could look at all their tutees and work out, was that pattern, was it a problem or not? Now, we were really clear when we did all of this, really, really clear, because I'll be completely honest with you in that we were struggling to find an appetite for this. So whereas the personal tutor system overall got really good feedback, the participation data really wasn't high up on people's wish lists. So we were really key on pushing the message that this was a conversation starter between the tutor and the student. It was only ever going to be accessible to the personal tutor. It wasn't available to anybody to just delve in. And that it was only ever to be considered as a single factor, one amongst many. As importantly, we were also clear up front that we weren't interested at that stage of running any of the algorithms or any of the metrics or logic across that data. We also were really clear that it wasn't intended as any way, so the participate in the meeting data wasn't there to measure staff adherence to the policy. And we were really clear as well that it was never to be used for anything around participation, because as it's been mentioned already, it's so open to gaming. You know, we've stood there and watched people tap their card and then tap 3 times for the rest of their friends to come through into the building, or stand and tap the lift and let people into through that route. So more than aware that people carry around people's cards, and really clear that this was a first attempt to get some sort of buy-in and show a value to this. Now, it took a fairly long-winded route to deployment for more so than any of the other things that we've released, in that it went to every single committee. The minute you mentioned participation data and this sort of information, it had to go through student experience, become interested, learning and quality became interested. The faculty executive boards were all up in arms. The IT strategy board and the unions. But what was interesting were the reactions. The students, whenever we had the student union, the student reps, they were all absolutely 100% on board. Really, really supportive of the concept, both the use of the analytics piece, which we accept is very, very thin at the moment, but the overall concept they were really supportive of. Even more so if we would flip it and let them see it. So at the moment we protected it in that we wanted to keep it, give it just to the tutors, always our intention to open it up further down the line. But the students, amazingly, we thought we were going to have some difficult conversations, but we didn't. But the academic staff were completely the other way, in that they were positive about the concept of the tutor part of the system, the meetings, the comments to a certain extent, and the ease of use, one click away, but they were really not that interested in the participation data. We showed it, we said, but what else? What else could we add in here? Because we've got a wealth of data that we could use. What else would you rather we put out that would give you that interest in it? But we just didn't get that buy-in at that time. We couldn't get the suggestions from them. So we put out what we did, as I said, toe in the water. So some of the things we had to do is we've already got significant statements in our terms and conditions of registration covering the use of data. Because we were going out just on that very thin use case, if you like, we amended our terms and conditions, and it went through all the appropriate bodies just to cover ourselves to this level. If we choose to do the next step, we will absolutely be going back. We'll be going around this, revisiting and bolstering the number of terms and conditions we have by quite some way. But this was at least allowing us to capture what we were and to use it in the way that we said we would. So where are we at the moment? Now, this system, we went live in September. And we analysed the data after 6 months of use. We were having conversations right the way through, but we've been properly analysing the data over the last couple of months. But a really confusing picture has emerged. The usage of the system, so the numbers of meetings being recorded, the numbers of comments being recorded, is really quite poor. But yet, when you show it, and one of my team has just been out in the last few weeks and shown it to the entire business faculty again, and the reaction is hugely positive. This is fantastic. Let's get using this. There's a disjoint somewhere. There's a definite disjoint. There's still not the appetite that there is from IT in relation to the learning analytics stuff, the participation data, as we actually call it. They're still not buying into that concept yet. So we've got to work on how we get that message across. There's a definite fear about comments, which is not really learned, but there's a definite fear about the wrong things being put in. And there was the definite feedback, lesson learned, with lots of dashboards going on, definite feedback that they wanted more graphically represented data. So that's one lesson we will be taking back. And there's also the tension between using a full CRM type product and having that full interaction, every transaction between students being captured, and what we've tried to position ourselves with. So we took a look at why usage would be poor when actually the feedback, the verbal feedback and the feedback we were getting to surveys was actually quite positive about the product. What we actually believe is that too many new systems are actually deployed. When we deployed this last September, we rolled out Microsoft Dynamics CRM across applicant as well. We rolled out a new attendance monitoring product, video capture, and this. It was a big program of change that we rolled out. And I believe that had a big inhibiting factor on take-up. But also the local usage, the way staff already use certain tools for things meant that we've got to break that culture. But also, and I think this has been one that is there just below the surface, and it's very difficult to get people to admit or to say it. But we actually managed to get one, and I've left the quote actually down there because I didn't put it in here. But concerns amongst the staff as to the management monitoring of that data as well. So we actually had somebody who said, well, if you're recording the comments that I have or the conversations I have in my tutees, then I want you to record all the conversations I have with all of the other people that I bump into in the corridor, because that gives you a picture of what I do. So there's a definite tension in whatever we think and whatever our intentions are around this being really for good. There's definitely some nervousness amongst colleagues of what we do with some of this data. So we just have to be really aware of and sympathetic to those feelings. So what's the focus for us going forward? We've got to try and increase the usage of the system, increase the belief across the university in the use of the participation data, because without it, it becomes really difficult to justify going on to the next stages and implementing some of the things that certainly the predictive analytics and things. We believe that one of the drivers for that would be flipping the solution. So actually we show the students and allow that almost to drive up usage across the faculty as well. That's perhaps quite a risky strategy, but it's one that we're considering. We are going through evaluation sessions. We're trying to work with tutors, with academics about what they would like to see, what we could do, with both pieces of the system, both the actual tutor system itself and the learning analytics piece, that would really give them some value, give them some added benefit. And I think certainly some of the stuff that Nottingham Trent have got with the showing a student's pattern against the norm is something that I think would be really interesting for us to try and do. So obviously we're going to address the outcomes and resolve the defects and anything else that's been put forward, and definitely improve the presentation. We're also one of the group looking at the JISC Learning Analytics project. Now, partly why I said some of what I said is about this. I sit on I'm secretary to the IT strategy board, so every new project comes through that group. The business case and the project request for business analytics or learning analytics was actually one of the most difficult that I've seen get through. So that was really a challenge for the person who was driving that, and it's our director of strategic planning who's actually really keen on it, as are we in IT. But there was a real pushback from the business about, well, do we really want this? Which, when you look at what's going on around the sector and the amount of people in the room, struck us as really unexpected. It has now, following a number of revisits, got itself to the top of the list in this particular space, and we are allocating resource to work with JISC now on properly embedding some of the data that we've already got into a more formal warehouse structure, because at the moment we're using, we haven't put it into a warehouse. That may then lead us towards exploration of using a wider range of data elements, and that again touches back to what we're doing with academics to try and work out what it is that they want. And then hopefully, and I think this will be a little bit in the future for us, but exploration of algorithms to really elicit the patterns, the sort of stuff that you've been talking today, and yeah, the sort of stuff that for us to get to where you are is going to be some considerable journey. And as we do that, obviously a full revisit of our terms and conditions as well. That was what I was hoping to say to you today.
So, are there any questions?
Hello. It's very interesting. An observation, really. I think one of the problems, we've done a very similar thing where we are in terms of that data, and we've been looking at attendance data for a long time, whatever. One of the problems I think we have, and we need to uncover, is that there's a deterministic model of how data is structured in the university in terms of a way we assume things work. And actually what the reality on the ground is often very different. So the management's perception of what should be happening and what actually is happening is often at variance. And I think this is possibly why people are worried about how data will be taken and used in different ways, not just to support learning, but actually to look at things like the performance. Looking at now, even now, things like the CMA compliance, are students getting what we're promising them? Because we're promising it from a marketing department. The people who are actually delivering haven't really changed their models of delivery that significantly. So you often see these students structured into timetable sessions which don't happen. Number of teaching weeks in a year is actually reduced because we stopped teaching 3 weeks before the assessments and things like that. But that's not what we've promised students. And I kind of think there might be a bit of tension that needs a little bit uncovering over time in terms of the quality of the data, the structure of the data, and the reality.
Yeah. I mean, part of what I said today was aimed at, while we believe this is a really useful set of tools, there is a definite cultural change piece that we are struggling with, and we have to do some work on. Definitely. Yeah.
Hi. I guess my question would be more revolving around your UI, how people are visualizing the data, as opposed to the analytics bit, which is trying to look at what's then happening, and maybe you could then do more predictive stuff like we saw earlier. Are you finding a slight bridge between that? Because just a bit of background from what we're trying to do at the London Business School is understand what activities people are carrying out, then provision based on those activities, as opposed to assuming the activities will carry on in the same manner.
I mean, in terms of the UI, I mean, we struggled. I mean, we did struggle. We've struggled to find advocates. I mean, if I was putting a business analyst into somewhere to work with people to gather requirements, we really have struggled to find people to articulate requirements to us about what they would like us to present, what they would like us to show, how they would like that vision. I mean, we can work with our planners about making things more graphical, making things look in a different way. I mean, we are solely looking at the moment, in terms of our first steps, we are just looking at that participation data. We feel so far away from getting towards predictive at the moment because we're still struggling to get the traction of just getting the participation part. And that, you know, I guess that's, I'd be really interested if other people are finding it much easier to get traction in your institutions, because it certainly feels like a somewhat uphill battle in ours at the moment.
Can I ask, one thing that I'm involved with is looking at the problem from both ends. So I'm doing an awful lot of training with personal tutors at the moment, but the sort of concept of ownership of personal tutoring within the institution is one question that's raised. I was wondered, for you, is it owned at an institutional level, at a school level, or some other arrangement?
It's a faculty level, so the faculties own that personal tutor role and relationship.
Have you found a difference in the uptake of some of the like the technical screens that you were showing, depending on how the faculties have operated or done separate training? Or
no, it's interesting that usually we have one particular faculty that we can very much rely on that will adopt systems, adopt things that we deploy, and we'll run with those. Our business faculty are usually right at the forefront of this, but almost to a man, no adoption in that faculty. So we've been looking, and it's very sporadic. In actual fact, our computing faculty and our faculty of architecture, computing and humanities were our biggest adopters, and they traditionally have been the more challenging to get. So it's been a really quite unusual pattern, and even though we've been into the business faculty and have asked them, the feedback is always been really positive, but the adoption, the take-up, is a completely different picture. So no, it's been a really tricky one to spot a pattern of usage in.
I'm just really interested. You've been talking about almost like showing them the carrot of, you know, this is the tool and there's all things you can do. Have you ever thought about going down the stick method and actually saying, you know, this is the policy, we need you to adhere to the policy, we will monitor you?
No. I've worked in higher education a long while, actually, for 20 years, and I've never once found that stick has ever worked with academics, not once.
Hello, we do at Newcastle University, so our last QA audit said that our personal tutoring needed to be redeveloped because it was patchy, the response we're getting from students. And so we needed some sort of system to monitor that. And we developed it in our e-portfolio system, and it had real similar functionality to yours. We have things like grades coming through, we've got UCAS statements coming through, all this sort of stuff, and then the meeting functionality. But it was compulsory. You had to record your meetings, and we do monthly reports to heads of school and all this sort of stuff. And on the whole, our take-up, the percentages are quite good. The reputation maybe isn't so good.
Well, that's really useful. That's really useful. Yeah, thank you.
I read a case study from a US institution with a very similar setup. And there it was, I think it all boiled down to accountability. So a question back is, who is accountable for student success in the institution? Are advisors accountable, and are the academic staff also accountable? And does that drive the use of data?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, our faculties are responsible for that. I mean, we have a student experience committee that are looking at, because we're coming at this from a student experience perspective as well. I mean, we were initially looking at retention as being the driver. The type of institution we are, it's crucial, but we're also interested in trying to start those conversations around attainment levels as well, which I think if we start to move towards that, that may well get more buy-in from the academics who really want to try and help some of those borderline students get above into the next category. But ultimately, our faculties have responsibility for that.
Hi again, Richard. My observation was more around I suspect that some of the challenges that you're being faced with around adoption is clarity on the carrot, not more of the stick. I think if you can show the reasons of why they need to do the thing that they need to do, it becomes a second nature. And some of that is around graphical presentation, there's no doubt about it. But more of it is to do with getting them to understand the value of the contribution that they could make to somebody's success, not just as a lecturer.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, David.
Thank you.